with the coach live. Please let me know if the audio is coming through clear. And I don't hear anything yet on my end. So let me know if you hear anything on your end. Okay, I've got audio on my end. Let me know if you can hear me, and then we will begin the live stream. You hear me? Excellent. Awesome. Okay. I'm running late today. I said I was going to do this about an hour ago, 53 minutes ago, and we're late, but we're here. We are here. So, 2 live Q&As in a row, and our friend Eichsender is back. We're doing this for you, buddy. We're doing this for you because, again, every time I do a Q&A, every time, our friend Eichsender, he misses it, and sent me a message the other day like, man, I hope I can see one of these. So we arranged to do 2 in a row at the time he's off of work. So here we go, buddy. This is for you and everybody else who's joining us today. So if you have questions, leave them in the comments, and we will give you some answers. Oh, no, not the ear-nibbling thing again. Not again. No, not back to the ear-nibbling conversation ninja style. No. We discussed that. Let's put that one to rest. Oh, quick question from a big monster wants to know who wins this boxing match, Deontay Wilder versus Anthony Joshua. Boy, that sounds like a cool boxing match. I would love to see that. I don't know, man. I don't know, and that's what makes it so interesting. Compelling fights are the ones where you don't know who's going to win. Compelling fights, the ones that keep you on the edge of your seat. The ones where you're going to buy the pay-per-view. If you know what's going to happen, it's not interesting. It's not fun. That's a fun fight to think about. Why is my voice so deep? Because it is, man, it is. Hey, thanks for the well wishes. Arevalo says, Hola, Coach Ramsey, I hope the knee is healing very, very slowly, apparently. But yeah, here we are in the struggle. Onward and outward. Do I ever use side triangles in MMA? A side triangle? Do you mean like a triangle set up from side control? I use a lot of variations of the triangle choke, and I set it up from a lot of different positions. I've got a whole playlist called All the Triangle Chokes, and it's a work in progress where it's just a bunch of different setups, a bunch of different finishes, a bunch of different information on triangle chokes. So you'll have to explain what you mean by a side triangle, because I use a lot of different triangle chokes. It's one of the most versatile submissions and control positions. Even if you suck at finishing the triangle, it is a great control position. Aravalo says, I work a full-time job and I've been awaiting your live. My question for you was too long to copy and paste. Well, maybe condense it a little bit. Break it down a little bit. I'd love to hear what you have to say. Did I see the Korean Zombie's last fight? I did not. It made Billy Moses sad, though. Well, I was thinking of looking it up, but if it made you sad, maybe it'll make me sad, too. What happened? Did he lose? Did he get beat badly? I don't know. I don't know how it ended. Feel free to spoil it for me. Okay, here's a question from Granddaddy Funk, who says, I know you've said that cardio is mostly a mental thing, but what kind of conditioning would you suggest for me to not get so gassed in sparring? You're the man, by the way. Hey, thank you. Appreciate the vote of confidence. So what kind of conditioning would you suggest to not get so gassed in sparring? You've got to condition your breathing. That's the most important thing. Now, I could prescribe a bunch of great exercises for you. Go do a bunch of burpees. Go do a bunch of plyometric jumps. Go do a bunch of strength training and sprints and things like that. That's all good stuff, and you should be doing that stuff. But you need to condition your breathing. The reason you get tired when you spar, when you train, when you fight, is because of the breathing patterns. If your breath and your movement are not connected, you're not getting enough oxygen, it will make you tired. So every type of exercise you do, every type of conditioning you do, you have to condition your breathing. Here's what I mean by that. You say, I can't use my nose. How can I condition my breathing? Can you breathe through your mouth? A lot of people can't breathe through the nose, like our friend Elong, the guy who dressed up like the Shaolin monk, and he was a kickboxer. He can't breathe through his nose. He broke his nose a number of times in fights, and he can't breathe through his nose. So, yeah, man. He has to breathe through his mouth, and that's okay. If you're in a fight, you're probably breathing through your mouth anyway. If you're in a hyperventilative state, you're probably breathing through your mouth anyway. That's a pretty normal way to breathe. So you have to time the exhales. Inhaling happens automatically. It happens automatically when you're in a hyperventilative state. If you're relaxed, you can inhale on purpose. Right? I can control that if I'm relaxed. But if I get up and do a bunch of jumping and sprinting and running and all of this stuff and fighting, then all of a sudden I'm not in control of when I breathe in. It becomes automatic. The body starts sucking in as much oxygen as it can. So you have to control the one thing that you have control over in your breathing in that state, which is the exhale. So you have to connect the exhale to your movement. And there are lots of ways to do this. You might hear some fighters hiss or shout or kyap when they strike kyap, like they do in karate and taekwondo. That's expressing breath with the movement. Now, it doesn't have to be a shout. It can be, right? And punching is pretty easy. It's a pretty easy way to time that because we time those percussive movements with the percussive breath. Now, grappling, when the movements are more slow or flowy or connected or fluid, the breathing becomes more like singing a song almost, more like singing a song about how you're moving. Not a very good song, but yeah. I had a question the other day somebody left in one of the videos about rhythm. He said, people always talk about the rhythm of fighting, and that doesn't make sense to me because fighting isn't really rhythmical. It seems pretty random to me. And he's absolutely right. So rhythm is a weird word to attach to combat sports. It is. But when you create your own internal breathing rhythm, and it can be arrhythmic, but it has to be consistent, connected to the movement, then it's going to work. Then your cardio is going to be better. So do all the exercises, do the burpees, lift the weights, run the sprints, and all that good stuff, but connect it to the movement. And one other tip, wear a mouth guard when you do your breathing conditioning. For example, if you're hitting the heavy bag and practicing your breathing, put the mouth guard on because you'll breathe differently with a mouth guard on than without, and you have to get used to that type of breathing, especially a double mouth guard where you have to take short, shallow breaths. We have a super chat. Where did that one go? Let's back up a little bit here. Somebody sent in a super chat. It's from Dallas Ellsworth. It's weird it didn't show up on my big screen. It's showing up on my little screen. Let's see what's going on here. What separates top-level fighters from average-level pros? Is it the superior technique or something else? What separates top-level fighters from average-level pros? Is it the superior technique or is it something else? That's a great question, man. It's a great question. I know a lot of professional fighters. I trained with a lot of professional fighters, all kinds of different skill levels. I train with the guys over at the UFC Performance Institute pretty regularly. And it's this is an interesting question because on the surface, it kind of seems like everybody's doing the same thing. But the differences are often very subtle. So the top level, like the next level guys, Like there are guys who are good. They're pros. There are black belts, and then there are professionals, and there are black belts. You know, with an exclamation point. And this is a different kind of thing, right? So how do you reach that next level to the game? What is it? A lot of the times it's, oh, the super chat finally showed up here on my main screen. Like 5 minutes later. That's kind of interesting. So yeah, if you're sending in a super chat and I'm not answering it right away, I will. Don't worry. It'll come. It'll come. So let's go back to this one from Dallas Ellsworth, because this is an intriguing question. And this is the question every good coach strives to answer. The honest answer is we don't know. There's a ton we don't know about this. There are so many variables in the fight game. Now, we could point to a couple of things like it seems like this is what's happening. It seems like this guy is doing it a little bit differently or doing a little bit more, or it seems like this guy is athletically blessed in a way the other guy isn't, or it seems like this guy has more drive and passion than the other guys. I'll tell you an experience. I think I told this story on the channel, but last year I went to the UFC Performance Institute to spar with the fighters, and I was working as a sparring partner with these guys, and a bunch of the Chinese fighters were getting ready to go to compete in the road to the UFC program. Basically, the winners of the road to UFC get a UFC contract. They get in there, right? And Dana White is watching these fights happen live, and it's a very high stress situation for these guys because this is their shot at the big time, right? So I'm helping these guys train for this, and some of these guys are just phenomenal. Some of these guys are just really, really good. And then I spar with this one guy named Mahashate. And he's the guy who ended up winning it. But when I sparred with him, I was a little underwhelmed at first. Because he didn't seem as athletic as the other guys or as aggressive as the other guys. Or he seemed to be lacking the attributes the other guys had. Except he was just a little bit different. Actually, he was a lot different. And while we're sparring, he seems kind of low energy, kind of like just sort of riding the wave a little bit. And then just out of nowhere, he explodes into this flying knee, gets me right in the chest, drops me, and it's just perfectly timed, just a great, great technique. And I was like, dang, that was something. His fight happens. And all these other guys who impressed me greatly in the gym at the UFC PI, they lost their fights. Unfortunately, they lost their fights. Mahashate goes out there, and he does exactly what he did to me to his opponent. He starts out. He seems like a slow starter. He's just sort of plodding all along, riding the wave, and then all of a sudden, boom! Explodes with that perfect flying knee to the chest and drops his opponent exactly the same way he dropped me. And I was like, holy crap, that was deliberate. This guy has a game plan. He's sticking to it. And Dana White stands up and he's like, whoa, this guy is something else, man. So it was interesting. What we feel is the pattern of success often isn't. So the honest answer to your question is a big I don't know, but we're all trying to figure it out. And when we do, we're going to make a lot of money off of it. So all we can do right now is study consistent patterns of success. Let me repeat that. All we can do right now is study consistent patterns of success. So as a coach, that's what I try to do. I look for consistent patterns of success, and I try to replicate them. So, yeah, man, we have some other super chats here. Let's take a look. Thanks, guys. Sends in a super chat. Thoughts on David Goggins? Can you read this like him? Who's going to carry the boats and the logs? I don't even know what David Goggins sounds like. I've heard the name. I know he's like an athlete, motivational speaker, content creator on the internet. I've never actually heard him speak before. I don't think I've watched one of his videos. So I don't know. Does he have like a distinctive voice? I don't know who's going to carry the boats and the logs. I don't know what he sounds like. So I'm sorry if that's disappointing. But I'm going to have to look up David Goggins after that and hear what he actually talks like. A Big Monster sends in a super chat. What makes a fighter so dedicated and obsessed with their craft? Is it a lack of fear, insanity, Boxing puts a lot of wear on the mind and the body. Yeah, sure. All combat sports put a lot of wear and tear on the body, the mind, the soul, your family, your friends, your social life, everything, man. It's a life of sacrifice. And the fact that so many fighters believe that sacrifice is worth it, that's quite interesting. I think it's because when we get comfortable in life, we start to crave adventure. We start to crave adventure. I'll tell you a little bit about me. So, why did I start fighting professionally? For a paycheck. I was working 3 jobs. I had medical bills I couldn't pay. And so I was thinking, how do I get a little bit of extra money every month to pay these bills? Otherwise, I'm going to be bankrupt. This is a problem. And I could have potentially solved that problem other ways, but what made sense in my mind right there was, well, there's a professional fight show in town. They're looking for kickboxers and MMA fighters. So I have martial arts experience. I can do this. So that's what got me into martial arts training. Now, the reason I tell you that story is because I could have potentially done other things. That's possible. At the time, I didn't see what the other things were, but I could have potentially done other things. I didn't. I went the route of combat sports because that is the one that made sense to me. That was the adventure that made sense to me. Because martial arts is flippin' cool, guys. It's flippin' cool. So, if you're going to do something difficult, you might as well do something difficult that's cool. Joey Nass says, why did you decide to keep fighting and training after you got injured? I've been injured many, many times. And why did I decide to keep fighting and training after I got injured? Because you get back on the horse, man. You get back on the horse. You cowboy up and get back on the horse, dude. It's just what you do when you're a fighter. It's just what's done. Now, if you're talking about the... I'm confused about the time frame of this question because I retired from professional fighting back in 2011. That was a while ago. I did not retire from training, from getting out there and training. That's like my whole thing, guys. But it's funny, a lot of people can't tell the difference between fighting, sparring, doing a martial arts related thing. It's a very different thing than a fight. I'm going to drop some names here. I love Jesse Enkamp. I consider him a friend and all that. And something Jesse does, it always makes me laugh, is he makes videos and he says, I fought so-and-so. I fought a Muay Thai champion. I fought a street fighter. I fought this. And then you watch the video and there's no fight. There's like a friendly sparring session or there's an exchange of technique ideas. And it's like, come on, Jesse. You've actually fought before. You've stepped in the ring. You've stepped in a cage. You've had a couple of MMA fights for real. You know what a fight is. He does. But it's a title for a video that garners a lot more views than I had a friendly exchange of ideas in a light sparring session with a friend. So, but at the same time, I bring that up because a lot of people have a difficult time differentiating between what an actual fight is and what a martial arts related thing is. Like take, for example, the Ultimate Self-Defense Championship. That's a martial arts related thing. It wasn't a fight. Does that make sense? We have a super chat from I Am Daniel. What do you think about someone who doesn't spar much, but well when it's time to combat because the drills were practiced repeatedly? Hold on, let me read that again. I think I read that wrong. What do you think about someone who doesn't spar much? But, well, when it's time to combat, because the drills were practiced repeatedly. Okay, I think what he's saying is, I think what I am Daniel is saying, what I would think about someone who doesn't spar a lot, but they drill a lot. They practice the technique a whole bunch of times. How are they going to do come fight time? Okay, did I understand that question correctly? If that's the case, what generally happens? Well, the first couple of fights that you have, the first couple of violent encounters you have where you get hit and hurt and you have an aggressive person do something evil to you, like physically harm you, it's a pretty jarring experience. And so most people don't handle that very well. No matter how much they've drilled, they just don't handle it very well. No matter how perfect their technique is, otherwise it's just not handled well. So that's an experience you generally have to acclimate to a little bit. So that's why I always say your first 10 fights are going to suck. Even the ones you win, they're going to suck. So, someone who doesn't spar much, but I assume we're sparring a little, so they know what a sparring session is. So, I would say if you have someone who's done 100 hours of sparring, like 100 honest consecutive hours of sparring. Consecutive is the wrong one, because you can do 10 minutes here, 10 minutes there, 30 minutes here, an hour of sparring another day, and that adds up. So across several months, you accrue 100 hours of sparring. That's a lot. And you're going to improve a great deal from that 100 hours of sparring. Now, if you've hit that level of sparring, then, yes, cumulative, that's the word I'm looking for. Thank you, my friend. If you hit that 100 hours of sparring, then additional sparring is still good. Additional sparring is always still good, but additional drilling, I'll give you an example. Drilling is super important. And drilling is not just sequencing. It's not just going through the motions of the technique against a cooperating partner. I'll give you an example of a drill I did today with my friend Jordan Chow. So we met up at the gym this morning, and I decided I wanted to drill De La Hiva guard, because out of all my jiu-jitsu positions, that's one I feel like I suck at the most. And so the drill was pretty simple. We start in De La Hiva guard, one guy standing, one guy down, and just play from there until there's a significant change in the position. Either the top guy passes the guard, the bottom guy gets a sweep or a submission or takes the back or whatever. When there's a significant change in position, then we change sides, right? So we go back and forth and do this for about an hour. That's a drill. It's essentially sparring, but it's a drill. It's positional sparring, but it's a drill. Does that make sense? So if you drill like that, then your sparring, your fighting is going to be significantly better than if all you do is free spar. We have a super chat from Willie the Crow who says, who would make the best missionary? Jack Dempsey, Yoel Romero, Khabib, or George Foreman? The best mission. What type of missionary are we talking about? What type of missionary are we talking about? Like an LDS Mormon missionary? Jack Dempsey actually was a Mormon, although in his own words he called himself a Jack Mormon because he didn't go to church. But he still said, I am proud to be a Mormon, the Jack Mormon that I am. He spent his childhood raised in the church, but as an adult he did not attend church meetings or anything like that. But he was never ashamed to be affiliated or associated with the church. That's interesting. Yoel Romero, is he a Catholic? I think he is. Most people from Cuba are. Khabib is Muslim, devout Muslim. George Foreman, I don't know what his religious beliefs are. I think Khabib would be a pretty good missionary. So I don't know if Muslims have missionaries of any type. Muslim friends out there, is there like Muslim missionary work, like proselyting Muslims? A friend Keziah says he is. Khabib is. So, yeah, in a way, when you are a public figure like Khabib and you stand up for your beliefs, which he often does, then yeah, that's a form of missionary work for sure. So, I think Khabib would be a great missionary for his religion. Joey Naz sends in a super chat with no questions attached. Awesome. Hey, thank you, man. I appreciate it. Let us celebrate the first super chat from Joey Naz, or Naz. How do you say that last name? I apologize if I'm mispronouncing it. Thank you. We have a super chat from Cole Reed, who says, you have positively affected my life by getting me into martial arts through your videos. Much love, Coach. Hey, man, thank you. Thank you. I love hearing that, man. I love hearing that. The internet's such a strange place because when you're a public figure of any capacity, when you have a sizable following on the internet, you will have a lot of naysayers just basically tell you you're the worst person in the world and everything you do is wrong. And then you get comments like this, like, dude, you've positively affected my life, and because of you, I got out there and trained, and I'm doing something really cool now. And that's like the polar opposite. That's awesome. Thank you. We have a super chat from DTV who says, I saw a guy who looks on mitts, but when they spar, I think they mean I saw a guy who looks good on the mitts, but when they spar, they're not that great. Yeah, that's pretty common. That's pretty common. Some coaches, some mitt holders are really, really good at making people look good on the mitts. And a lot of the times it's not the guy hitting the mitts, it's the guy holding them that makes them look good, makes them look all fast and so on. Mitt work is a supplement to training. It's not a replacement for training. It's not an indication of how good you are at fighting if you can go really fast and look really crisp on the pads. The pads are there to help teach technique. The pads are there to help rep out movements that you want to do in sparring. And if you are drumming on the pads, playing a song on the pads, dancing with the pads, it's fun, but it doesn't translate to fighting if that's not the intent behind it. So yeah, man, I see that a lot. Okay, we have a serious question. This kind of sounds like a joke question, but serious question from Ninja Style, who said, how would 5 of the best strongmen like Eddie Hall, who deadlifted 1,100 pounds, Brian Shaw, 5-time world champion, Thor, I assume Thor Bjornsson, and Mitchell Hooper, how would they fare against one bear? Well, that depends on the type of bear. If it's a grizzly bear, they could have a tough time with that. It's possible they could beat one grizzly. If it's a brown bear or a black bear or a sun bear or a panda bear, they're going to have a much, much easier time with that thing. Not all bears are created equal. Now, I've seen some of these guys, like Eddie Hall did some boxing matches, and like a lot of big guys who don't specialize in boxing and they focus specifically on strongman, but they dabble in boxing. You know, he's very explosive for the first minute or so, and then he peters out. But you'll also notice the same sort of thing with bears. So when bears fight each other, Google this, look this up. Grizzly bears fighting. You will see huge, explosive swats and pushes and all this stuff. And then after half a minute, they're just kind of dead and tired and they quit. So you have 5 of these guys. If they can avoid the jaws and the claws and work to get behind that bear, I think they could tire it out in about half a minute. But they would have to work together very carefully. They'd have to work together very carefully. I saw a video today that kind of blew my mind of a crocodile. Okay, so there's this lady, she's a crocodile handler. She's probably about somewhere 25, 26 years old maybe. And she is a crocodile handler. She's putting on a show. There are a bunch of kids watching. She's feeding the crocodile. They put like a dead pig in the crocodile environment. What do we call this thing? Enclosure. The crocodile grabs it and starts doing a gator roll, and everybody's watching like, whoa, crocodiles are fast when they're in the water. And then the crocodile grabs this lady by the hand with its jaws and starts pulling her in the water. And it starts doing the gator roll, and her head slams on the side of the pool. And I'm like, holy crap, am I about to watch a woman die? And then this lady does something really interesting. She pulls guard around the crocodile's head. Her hand is still trapped in its mouth, and she wraps her legs around its mouth. She's on the bottom of its jaw, and that stops the thing from gator rolling. And she holds it there. And I'm like, wow, this is interesting. I talked to Jeff Chan back in February about how to possibly beat a crocodile in hand-to-hand combat. And Jeff suggests maybe jump on the top of it like Bruce Lee and Enter the Dragon when he killed that one dude. And no, it turns out pulling guard on the crocodile's face is what actually works. And so she holds the crocodile there, and then a guy jumps out and grabs the crocodile from the back, and eventually they're able to pry its mouth open and get her free. So really interesting situation there. Not what I expected. If somebody had told me before that, the best thing to do to stop a crocodile from gator rolling you and killing you would be pull guard on it, I would have laughed. But alas, I was wrong. All right, we have some more super chats. I Am Daniel says, do you think a lot of guys in the UFC or other organizations don't have a fight IQ? They just have the balls to get into the ring and fight. I would say at the UFC level, you have to have a sizable fight IQ. I could point at some fighters who definitely have a higher fight IQ than others, but pretty much everybody there knows what's up to get to that level. Now, as far as like local MMA shows, low-level, entry-level pro, yeah, you'll see a lot of guys who just have the guts to get in the ring that aren't very high on the fight IQ, but to get to the UFC level, yeah, you have to know what's up, and your team has to know what's up, and your coach has to have a fight IQ. Yeah, you have to understand the sport at a pretty high level at that point. All right, we got some more super chats here. One from Joey Nuz, who says, time frame. I was referring to the injury that left you with a blind spot and memory issues. I watched your videos for years, but only recently learned this from the USDC breakdown, the video that left me in tears. Oh, okay, yeah. All right, so your question about like why do I basically keep training after the injury that put me into retirement? So I fought multiple-time Chinese Sanda national champion Wang Guan, who holds all kinds of crazy world titles in Muay Thai, kickboxing, local titles in MMA, etc. Just crazy fight resume. Again, Sanda champion. Broke my skull in 2 places, left me partially blind, and yeah, with a soft spot right there and a crack up here and a hole right there, and it's a mess, man. It's a mess. So I've talked about this on my channel a number of times. Why did I keep training after that? I think the initial reason that I kept training after that is because of combat addiction. Let me explain what I mean by that. So, fighting was such an integral part of my life. Combat sports was such an integral part of my life. I couldn't imagine my life without it. That's how I was making my money at the time. That's how I was paying the bills at the time. That was my identity at the time. I was a fighter. That's just what happened. And my life was like, it was like a real life game of Street Fighter 2 where you get on an airplane, you fly to some country, you fight a dude with a certain fighting style, you get back on that plane, fly to another country, fight another dude with a different fighting style, and you just keep doing that over and over, and you get paid for it, and it's awesome. And sometimes you win and sometimes you lose, but either way, you'll learn something, and then boom, it's all over. So initially, I talked to doctors and they said, you will never fight again. You will never fight again. Second opinion, third opinion. You will never fight again. Fourth opinion. Dude, look. You keep pushing this issue. You could physically get in the cage again and fight, but it was dangerous before. Let me level with you. It's going to be a lot more dangerous now. And I had so many people telling me, you need to hang up the gloves, dude. I didn't want to hear it. I did not want to hear it. You need to hang up the gloves. It's time to hang up the gloves, man. You're not getting any younger. I was in my early 30s at the time. I was like, dang, I feel like I've got so many fights left in me. I feel like I've just barely got started and scratched the surface. And it was painful. But I made a transition there. I made that transition from my whole identity was the fighter who made my living flying around the world, fly around Southeast Asia, fighting and all that, to the coach. As opposed to a fighter first and a coach second, a coach first. And this was a big transition for me, man. It's a big one. The fact that I can still train with injuries, that's important. That's very important to me. I know some guys who have experienced injuries that were not nearly as extreme, and they won't spar. They won't do what I do. So I'll tell you what, as long as I am able to train, I will do it. Yeah, Michael, you were absolutely correct. No doctor is going to tell you that fighting is a good idea. And if you're injured, a lot of them will tell you, don't do it. But that last one I talked to, he was very honest. He got my attention and he got my respect. Fighting was dangerous before. Now it's going to be very dangerous. David P. says, hey, Coach, I was wondering why you get a lot of Mormon questions. Probably because I'm a Mormon. Is it man-made? And I thought you read the Bible. No disrespect. I do read the Bible. Did you know? In the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, sometimes nicknamed the Mormons, we read the Bible. One of our articles of faith reads as follows: we believe the Bible to be the Word of God. Yeah, exactly. It's the Church of Jesus Christ, so of course we worship the Lord Jesus Christ. And everything the Bible says about Jesus Christ, there you go. That's the gospel truth, my friend. And guess what else? We have additional books of Scripture, such as the Book of Mormon, which also teach about Jesus Christ. Yeah. So there you go. So that's why people ask me Mormon questions. That's why they ask me about that a lot. I don't shy away from them. If you want to talk about my religion, my faith, etc., we'll talk about it. We will talk about it. I know a lot of people, they want to keep religion and politics and whatever else off their channel and just stick to one subject. I don't mind. I don't mind one bit. I do have a channel which I haven't posted on in months, Ramsey Dewey, on religion and philosophy, where all we do is talk about religion and philosophy. And another channel, Ramsey Reads the Bible, where all I do is read the Bible and talk about each chapter one at a time. So yeah, please go subscribe to those as well. David P. is asking, is the guy who made Mormon or Mormonism or the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, was he an occultist? I believe you're talking about Joseph Smith. Was he an occultist? No, he was not. I believe in God and the Bible, but not religion. Okay. Well, if you believe in the Bible, you believe in religion. Why? Do you remember what the Apostle James taught? You know, the Apostle James, who was taught firsthand by Jesus Christ, he said this: pure religion and undefiled before God and the Father is this: to look after the fatherless and the widows in their affliction, and to keep oneself unspotted from the world. And the Apostle Paul echoed this sentiment about religion, what real, true religion is. That it's not about being able to speak in tongues, and it's not about, prophesying, and it's not about having all the gifts of the Spirit, and all of these things which the Bible teaches are real things. It's about having the pure love of Christ, charity. It's about observing the two great commandments that Jesus taught us, to love God above all else, and number 2, like unto it, to love your neighbor as yourself. That's the religion of the Bible. So if you believe in the Bible, that's the religion that you should believe. But it's not it is not a religion of belief. It is a religion of action. Love is an action word. It's not a passive thing. We're just like, I've got positive feelings in my heart for people, so I'm good. No, you love someone, you prove it. You go out there and you prove it. Look after the fatherless and the widows in their affliction. Keep yourself unspotted from the world. Do something, man. Do something. That is pure religion. So I don't care what you call your church, what you call your creed. If you're doing that, you're doing right. This is an interesting question from Eichsender, who says, do you have any advice on tuning motivation for training down a bit? I seem to have the problem of being all amped up and then getting injured for training from sparring too hard. Also, how to nibble ears. Not the ear nibbling thing again. Come on, dude. We put that to rest yesterday. No more ear nibbling in Okay. Ear nibbling aside. Advice on turning the motivation for training down a bit. So you get really amped up. Okay, a lot of people have the opposite issue, and they're like, how do I get more motivated to get out there and train? And you're like, let's go! Right? And yeah, when you get a little too hyped, you're bouncing off the walls, you're sparring too hard, and injuries often follow. So that's a good question. How do you tone it down a bit? You got to practice. And before you practice toning it down a bit with, say, your teammates, heavy bags and grappling dummies are great substitutes. So you can make the mistakes on those. I'll give you an example. There's a video I made recently. Let me see. I'll put a link to it in the comments here. It's a fairly recent one. Let's see here. Which playlist did I put that one in? I don't know. I'll just check my videos here. Let's see. What was it called? Should be right here. Ah, here we go. It is called Use a Heavy Bag to Learn Controlled Sparring. Okay, I published this 3 months ago. Let me copy the link to that, and I'll put this one in the chat right here. So I'm about to post it. Okay, so go check out this video. And I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about, using the heavy bag in a way that helps you essentially tone it down and learn controlled sparring, where you can keep the intensity and the speed and all this stuff, but nobody gets hurt, nobody has to die, right? So this would be a great video for you if you haven't seen it. If you have seen it and you didn't quite grasp the message about how this relates to your question, this video answers your question. So the link is right there. My name's highlighted in yellow. So go follow that and watch that video. Use the heavy bag as a tool to control your sparring. We have a super chat from Sammy Woods who says, what do you think of fighting games? Man, there's some fighting games I absolutely loved when I was a kid. Double Dragon was like, that was my jam when I was a kid. Double Dragon. If you watch some of my videos where, Jordan Chow and I dress up as Bimmy and Jimmy Lee, Billy and Jimmy, and show the moves of Double Dragon and all this, you probably know I've got a special place in my heart for Double Dragon. I also loved Street Fighter 2. That was like probably the most transformative video game of my teenage years, man. In more recent times, I haven't played as many fighting games, so I'm not well versed in the modern fighting games, but Double Dragon, Street Fighter 2, oh man, those games had a massive impact on my life. Massive. I'll tell you a little story. When I was in 7th grade, I got in a lot of fights, but one fight in particular, my big 7th grade brawl, man. So the school bully, it's first period social studies class. It's 8:30 in the morning. He comes over to me and he starts harassing me. He starts giving me a hard time, and I'm sick of it. I deal with this every day, and so I stand up in the middle of class. There's a substitute teacher there that day, and so he's a little bit more lenient, not controlling the crowd as well as the usual teacher. And I stand up and I say, "After school, in the park, be there." Because it seemed like a good thing to say at the time. And the bully's like, "What? What did you just say to me?" "Oh, okay, I'll be there. We're going to rumble, man. We're going to rumble after school, yeah." And then there's some murmuring. Everybody's like, "Whoa, whoa, Dewey's going to fight, whoa." And I go and sit down. I'm all hyped up like, "Yeah, I just challenged the bully to a fight. The heck did I just do?" And then this girl named Brandy Firkins, she turns around. She's sitting in front of me. She turns around. She's like a freckle-faced girl with a big smile on her face. She turns around and she says, "So how many hits do you think it'll take to knock the bully's name is Travis. How many hits do you think it'll take to knock Travis down?" I'm like, I didn't really think this through very well. I don't know. Anyway, so everybody's buzzing about the big fight after school. And it turns out the bully and his friends decide they don't want to wait till after school. After lunch, at lunchtime, I'm walking outside the school. And then I hear footsteps. And there's a crowd of like 30 people following me. And I turn around and they form this big circle around me. I'm like, what's happening? The school bully and his friends are like, "Hey, so we were talking and we decided, let's do it right now." And I was like, "I said after school, and that's what I meant." And I try to walk away from them, and then they grab me, and they throw me on the ground, and they proceed to beat the ever-living crap out of me. And I'm like, "Whoa!" I'm getting my ribs broken. I'm getting kicked in the head. I'm getting kicked in the ribs. I'm getting punched. It's a full-on beatdown by like a bunch of dudes. I don't know how many were attacking, how many were spectating, but it was a lot. And so I managed to get up and scramble away, and then some people come out with like a rope. I'm like by the sidewalk next to the school. They got a rope and they're holding up the rope next to me so I can't run into the parking lot and escape. And they're like, "Don't let him out." And I'm like, what is happening? This big dude named Steve. Steve, he flunked a time or two, and so he was bigger than the other kids. Steve comes out and he's like the size of a full-grown man, and I'm like 10 or 11 or something like that. And I'm like, what is happening? And it's like a game of Double Dragon where a Bobo comes out, the big muscly giant sprite guy, and you're just like a normal sized guy looking up at him like, this doesn't work in real life, but in a video game it works. And so what's the point of the story? Double Dragon. That's the point of the story. Awain Kanawe. That's the point of the story. That's what we're getting to right now. So Double Dragon flashes through my mind because there's this adult-sized giant abobo human being in front of me, and I'm like a child-sized human being, and I'm like, holy crap, I don't know how to fight. I'm getting killed. Steve, the giant dude, boom, he punches me right in the chest right here. Ugh, it breaks my sternum. I go flying on the ground. I'm like, oh, I can barely breathe. I get up because as soon as I land on the ground, they're kicking me some more. I get up, and he hits me again. Boom, same spot. I feel like I'm dying, like my heart is imploding or something like that. And I'm like, if I don't fight back, I'm going to die, man. And so my mind is racing. Okay, what do I know about fighting? Nothing. Wait, Double Dragon. Okay, what do they do in Double Dragon? Oh, there's that one move where you grab the dudes and then you knee them repeatedly. I'm going to do that. So I run up to Steve. He's huge. I can't reach his head. So I grab his coat. I grab the lapels of his coat and I just start kneeing him in the groin like 16 times. And Steve is like, oh, and he saunters off into the crowd. That's the last I saw of that. I know I could have simply nibbled his ears, but that wasn't a move in Double Dragon, so it wasn't in my mind at the moment. And then I'm like, oh, holy crap, that actually worked. And I turn around and the school bully, and like 5 of his friends are there, and the school bully's like, come on, man, come on. I'm like, I just got beaten down by like 16 dudes. I'm not gonna fight you next. Oh, this, man, Double Dragon is fun when it's a video game, but when 15 dudes attack you at once, not so fun in real life, man. Not so fun in real life. So I can barely walk at this point. I'm like on my knees, and I start crawling toward the school, like, help, I need an adult, help, help. And I get in the school and I collapse. I can barely breathe because again, my sternum, my chest is broken at this point. And I'm like, and the school bully and his friends, they run into the school and they start screaming, we won, we won. And they trample me and run off. And that was it, man. That was my big 7th grade brawl. So, what would Double Dragon do? Yes. Yes. So, Double Dragon had moves that you could use in real life. So I'm glad that Street Fighter 2 was not my first experience with fighting video games. Otherwise, I would be thinking, what do I do? Hadouken! Oh wait, why didn't a fireball come out of my hands? Oh crap, I'm in trouble now. Okay. Did we get some questions while I was telling that? Oh, this is an interesting. David P. says, will you do Q&As on your Bible page? I'd like to talk to you more about that. I should definitely do some Q&As on my Bible page or on my religion and philosophy channel as well. Thank you for the idea. I'm going to start doing that. I think I have enough subscribers on that channel to do live videos now. Not on the religion and philosophy channel. I believe you need at least 1,000 subscribers before you can go live on YouTube. And my religion and philosophy channel only has a few hundred subscribers. So, for all of you listening, go subscribe to my religion and philosophy channel. I'm going to put a link in the, in the comments section here. Let's see here. So let me find a link to Ramsey Dewey on religion and philosophy. Here we go. Okay. Here is the link, youtube.com/@Ramsey2, which is my channel, Ramsey Dewey on religion and philosophy. Go subscribe to that so I can get at least 1,000 subscribers so I can do live videos over there and we can have discussions all about religion and philosophy. And it's going to be great. It's going to be awesome. Tell your friends about it. Some of you might not tell your friends about this channel because maybe your friends aren't interested in martial arts, but people like to talk about other things too. And I've got channels about other things too. So, yeah, go subscribe to that one. I'm doing a shameless plug for myself because if you don't do it yourself, who's going to? Can you develop power in your strikes without hitting a pad or bags? Says Il Salubrious Dithyram. Yes. Yes, you can. Pads and bags are tools to help give you some feedback, or the pad holder some feedback about how hard you're hitting and your bone alignment, if it's good, or if you're going to bend your wrist in the wrong direction or something like that. But power in strikes is about good body mechanics. And again, a heavy bag can give you some good feedback about how your body mechanics are upon impact. But you can develop good body mechanics even without a heavy bag. Again, it's a very useful tool. You'll be better off with one than without one. But yeah, man, work your body mechanics. If you don't know what those are, I've got some videos on this channel about them. Some pretty good ones, if I do say so myself. All right. What other questions do we have today? Double leg takedowns on concrete. All right, Nathan Judd asked this. Can you do double leg takedowns on concrete? Of course you can. Don't get into street fights. Don't go out there and get into sidewalk fights. Don't go out there and get into concrete fights, but of course you can. A lot of people are under the erroneous idea that a double leg takedown is dropping your knee on the floor. No. No. Do you know why freestyle wrestlers, when they do a penetration step, when they shoot, that sometimes that knee goes down to the mat in between their opponent's legs? Do you know why? Because a freestyle wrestling stance is very low. Because when they clinch up, they get super low. They're like, I can't even, let me back up a little bit more. Basically like this. We're grabbing that guy and we're pummeling, we're down blocking, we're sprawling, and while this, our hips are back and our head's up here, and we're trying to snap that dude down. And to get under this, here's me standing all the way up, right? If I'm doing that, a wrestler can easily get to my hips. And so when we wrestle without strikes, we get down really low like this. And so to get under this, to get the shoulder to the hip, what do I have to do? I've got to shoot super low. And so my knee has to go down low. Is that the only way to shoot for a double leg? Heck no. Of course not. You can do double legs without your knees touching the floor. You can connect your shoulder to the hips without your knees touching the floor. And this happens in MMA all the time. We don't see it so much in freestyle wrestling. But we see it in MMA because the posture is very different. Because in MMA, you've got an upright posture most of the time. Why? Because you're striking and you're boxing, you're kickboxing, and all of this stuff. Okay? And so the posture comes up. If you throw a striking combination and the other guy brings his high guard up, look, my arms are way up here. There's an easy entry to my hips, and I don't have to duck walk on the floor with my knees on the floor to touch this. I've made several videos about this topic. Several of them. And apparently I haven't made enough videos about this topic because people still have this erroneous idea that you've got to drop your knee on the floor. Even wrestlers don't drop their knee. They don't slam their knee on the floor. They're not giving themselves bursitis when they shoot that low, when they're getting really low. Okay? They are driving forward. The first thing to make contact is the shoulder on your opponent's hip. Yeah, it's kind of like a football tackle. Yes, football players, American football players, do not drop their knees on the floor and then grab the guy. They grab the guy, they're driving forward, and then they go down with their opponent, right? So when we shoot, we grab the guy shoulder to hip, we entangle the legs, both legs with our arms, hence the name double leg takedown. And when we're going that low, doing the duck walk with the knee to the floor, the knee is the last thing touching the ground. But again, you don't have to do that. You don't have to go that low if the guy's standing upright, say in an MMA fight. So go check out my videos about that. Apparently I need to make another one. Nitka says, "Hi coach, do you have any thoughts on Bradley Martin, the bodybuilder, talking about how he can beat professional fighters like Mighty Mouse in a fight?" I did a seminar over at the University of Southern California when I was in LA about a week ago. And we did a technique seminar, and then after we did a live Q&A, which was really fun. It was really cool to actually see the faces of the people I was talking to, and they asked me this question, and we filmed it. I might put up the footage of that, but I'll give you a quick answer here. I've seen a couple of Bradley Martin's videos, mostly his strength training videos, seen videos of him doing deadlifts and cleans and things like that. So obviously he's a very strong guy. He's a very physically imposing guy. But apparently lately he's made some videos claiming that he could beat professional fighters like Mighty Mouse in a fight and so on. Or claiming that he could beat some professional boxer in a fight. I don't remember who. And it is strange how many, I know he's like 260 pounds, and a lot of people are like, 260 pounds, that's so many pounds, whoa. I mean, dude, like, not that long ago, before COVID, I was walking around at 235 pounds, and people were still saying I was skinny, man. You're so skinny. You're 235 pounds skinny. And Bradley Martin, a few more pounds, and everybody's like, he's giant. Ah, yeah, he's a pretty big dude. 265 is nothing to bat an eye at, right? He's a big dude, and so he's big, he's strong, and I don't know so much if it's him believing that he could beat these guys, or him as a content creator understanding that saying these things is going to stir up some controversy and get a lot of clicks and a lot of views on the internet. If Bradley Martin fought Demetrius Johnson would probably shoot in for a high single, move around the back, dump Bradley Martin on his face, and then choke him out pretty quickly. That's probably what would happen. So it's just he's a big dude, he's a strong dude, but Mighty Mouse knows how to fight for real, like really, really, really well. Like really well. Now the size and strength difference, it's not nothing, but it's not enough if you don't have the fighting chops to back it up. Now, if Bradley Martin went out there and he trained in martial arts for a couple of years and he maybe developed like some jiu-jitsu skills and some wrestling skills and some legit boxing skills, etc., and then came back and said, I think I can beat you up, Mighty Mouse, we might have an actual fight on our hands. But if it's just like, I lift weights and so I can beat you, it's not the same thing, man. I do an accessory work and so I'm going to be good at the main. Nah, it doesn't work that way. But yeah, these podcasts have generated a lot of views, and so Bradley Martin will probably continue saying these things to fighters. You know, I wonder, what would happen if the inverse happened? What would happen if I went around talking to some big, strong weightlifter, bodybuilder guys, and were like, I can beat you in a fight. I can beat you in a fight. Bradley Martin, I can beat you, so-and-so. What would happen? Would those fights actually happen? I don't know. I wouldn't. Would those videos generate views? Would people start clicking on that saying, well, this guy's 265 pounds and that guy's only like 220 pounds. So, I don't know. I don't think that would be very clickable, to be honest. So apparently they're going to have a BJJ match because of how Bradley called him out. Okay. Well, that would be fun to see. They could have a BJJ match. It's to the death, but nobody has to die. That's one of the great things about BJJ. It's a simulation of a fight to the death, but nobody has to die. Nobody really has to get hurt. But at the same time, the message is brought across. Ramsey wants to fight Brian Shaw. I don't want to fight Brian Shaw, man. He seems like a really nice guy. Let's take a couple more questions before we call this a day. Ichigo Kurosaki says, is it possible to have knowledge of martial arts in the world? We have Batman that has mastered every martial art, but having knowledge of each one and use it for your advantage in a fight. Okay, so is it possible to have knowledge of like every martial art in the world like Batman? I think that's what Ichigo is asking. So can you master every martial art like Batman? So canonically, Batman has mastered like 127 fighting styles, not just dabbled in 127 fighting styles, but mastered 127 styles. So he's a master of boxing, Taekwondo, Jiu-Jitsu, Judo, Aikido, you name it. He's a master of it, right? Is that possible? I think the way it's presented in the comic book is very hyperbolic. What's possible is to master useful aspects of a whole bunch of different martial arts. You could master probably the most useful aspects of 127 different fighting styles, for sure. But we're talking about like take one, two, three things from each thing, right? Like look at Aikido, for example. I could master the concept of finding this bone right here in the hand to make it easier to manipulate the wrist so I can more successfully control the arm. If I can master that one thing from Aikido, that one body mechanic, that's going to be super useful in all my other martial arts endeavors that involve grappling and hand fighting especially. Okay? So we can master that. That's not going to take me years and years. That's going to take me a little bit of dedicated practice, and I can master that one Aikido principle, for example. So we could look at almost every martial art like that, and I think at the end of the day, that would be a much more effective Batman than someone who would take the time to memorize every single form and every single kata of every single style and then have to throw out most of that information for what he actually does, fighting a bunch of criminals on the streets and so on. Because what Batman actually does is way, way different than what most of those martial arts teach. So I think like a real life Batman, a real life guy who can do what Batman does as far as hand-to-hand combat in the comics or the video games or the movies would be a guy who streamlined his approach to those 127 martial art styles as opposed to trying to master each one. Does that make sense? Oh, we got a super chat from Sammy Woods who says, who would win in a fight between Andre the Giant and Francis Ngannou? Would Andre's size make up for the massive skill disparity? Oh, okay. So we're talking about a fight, not a pro wrestling match. Not a wrestling match, but a fight. Okay. From what I understood, Andre could wrestle a bit. I don't know how good his wrestling was, but he could wrestle a bit, according to what most people who knew him would say. And being that big and being able to wrestle a bit makes you a pretty scary guy. Okay. So, Francis Ngannou, though, yeah, man, I don't see a fight like that ending well for Andre the Giant. Francis Ngannou he's big enough. He is big enough, he's strong enough to negate that size difference, I think. Especially since Ngannou is a very good fighter, on top of being a very big, physically imposing guy. So, no, Andre's size isn't going to make up for that skill disparity. Aravelo is giving us an update on the situation. Ramsey, the doc said to take a week off, and a fighter said he was out of grappling for 6 to 8 weeks. What do I do? It's been a week, and I want to train. Thank you for your time, sir. So Aravelo has apparently had an injury. The doctor told him to take a week off. A fighter said he was out of grappling for 6 to 8 weeks. It's been a week. He wants to train. Well, if the doctor said to take a week off, and if you're feeling like you can train, it's been a week, and you're following the doctor's orders, obviously don't go nuts when you go back to the gym. Take it a little easy, test your limits a little bit, see what you're able to do. If you got a fighter friend who apparently, I assume he had the same injury, and your fighter friend has not been able to grapple for 6 to 8 weeks and maybe has recommended to you to take more time off, listen to your body. You got to learn to listen to your body. What's your body telling you? Do you need a little more time off? But even when you're taking time off, you still need to focus on active recovery. You still need to train. You still need to move, is what I mean by that. You have to get your blood flowing in order to recover faster. All right, let's take one more question here. Some boy says, what do you think of the K1 Openweight World Grand Prix returning? Oh, I didn't know it's returning. It was a fun show when it was on. Do you think it can ever get as big as it did in the 90s and the 2000s? In some parts of the world it could. It could. Like I think in Asia it could. Like kickboxing is a popular sport in China. In America, kickboxing was a popular sport in the movies. And in the 90s and the 2000s, we had a lot of Jean-Claude Van Damme movies and people who wanted to be the next Van Damme making movies. But kickboxing in America, it was a very underground kind of thing. And so when the K1 Openweight World Grand Prix came out and that was happening, not everybody knew about it, not in the States. I remember seeing one of these fights on cable once, and I was like, what is this? This is amazing. This is awesome. I wish this was on TV all the time. But it wasn't. It was just really hard to find. So I think in the United States, it's going to be hard to sell that, even though guys like me think it's super cool. But in Asia, I think it's going to do really well. So again, parts of the world, kickboxing sells, and parts not so much. K1 is an underrated tournament. Yeah, you could say that. You could say that. Jeff Mazer says, K1 got sort of big in France because of Jerome Le Banner. Yeah. Sometimes when you have like a national representative of the sport in your country who's doing really well, it can catch on. That certainly helps. So I think K1 was probably more popular in Europe than it ever was in the U.S. What makes K1 different from just kickboxing? The rule set. SBV wants to know what's the difference between K1 and just kickboxing. The term kickboxing refers to a pretty broad set of combat sports that involve punching and kicking, right? And there are a lot of different rule sets that we can consider kickboxing. K1, we could call that kickboxing. Muay Thai, we could technically call that kickboxing too. And some people will say, oh, I object to that. But yeah, kickboxing is basically you're in a ring, there's punching, there's kicking, and maybe there's some other stuff. But what is the K1 rule set? It is pretty simple. It's pretty streamlined. You can punch and you can kick to any legal scoring part of the body. There are brief intervals of clinching allowed, and by brief I mean very brief, meaning you can grab a collar tie, you've got to throw like one shot, one knee, one punch, and you got to disengage immediately. If there's any inactive clinching, it is penalized. So there's no stalling, no hugging, you can't just grab, no elbows, somebody brought that up, no elbows. You can knee at any point, so you can do a flying knee, you can do a standing knee, if you can grab a collar tie and throw a knee, but you got to let go, because again, no inactive clinching. And because of that one rule, no inactive clinching, it's a much more high energy sport than a lot of other kickboxing rule sets. Because a lot of kickboxing rule sets have the same tie-up issues as boxing does, meaning you can punch and then you get in there close and both fighters grab each other and they hug and they hold until the ref breaks them apart and says, fight again. And then they start boxing. And so a lot of boxers take advantage of this, and when they need a break, they tie up with the other guy. And that doesn't exist in K1. You can't tie up with the other guy or you're losing points on the scorecard. And so it's just faster and more boom, boom, boom. You got to go, 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 go. K1, the original iteration anyway, was also a tournament. So do you know why kickboxing matches have three-minute rounds instead of a whole bunch of rounds like a boxing match where they have 10, 12, or used to have 15 rounds in a fight? It's because it was a tournament format, meaning the original K1 fighters had to fight multiple times in a row, multiple consecutive fights. And so they shortened the fights to 3 rounds. So it's kind of funny that modern kickboxing, even though most modern kickboxing shows are not tournaments where they have consecutive fights, they still follow that K1 guideline of 3-minute rounds. Funny, huh? Yeah. What did I miss right here? Bug says, believe it or not, there have been 3 instances where people have accidentally pooped on the mats at my BJJ gym. It happens, I guess. Why are we talking about poop on the mats? Gross. Gross. Oh man, so back in the early 2000s, there was a online forum that I used to frequent. Do you remember those? Do they still have online forums where you write a post and then you wait like 10, 20, 30 minutes to see if anybody replies to your post? And then maybe someone else will reply to that. It's kind of like a slow motion chat group. Anyway, so there was one of those back in the early 2000s that I was following, and it was a bunch of cage fighters and cage fighting enthusiasts writing on this forum. And my friend Daryl, he posted a video on this forum of these 2 jiu-jitsu guys grappling, and they're grappling, and the guy on top is trying to pass the other dude's guard. The other dude wraps his legs around the other dude. He's got the guard up, and he starts squeezing, and he's squeezing, and the camera is facing from behind. And then you see slowly the top dude's pants start to get soiled, and they start turning brown. He's squeezing the poop out of him. And, ew. So your comment just brought back memories of that video I've been trying to forget all of these years. So take care of your intestinal health and your intestinal fortitude, literally and figuratively. Yeah, man, we don't want to poop on the mats. Tactical pooping. Oh. Did you know, in an MMA fight, this is a rule a lot of people don't know about because it's not spoken about often on the internet, but if you vomit on the mats, if you poop on the mats, you lose. That's a technical knockout. It's a technical knockout if you vomit on the mats. Also exists in most kickboxing rule sets too. I had a kickboxing match this one time. I won by 2nd round TKO, and here's what happened. So, first round is pretty normal, some punches and kicks exchanged. I'm getting the better of my opponent in the first round. He's starting to get really tired, right? And I land some body shots on him, and it's wearing him out. And 2nd round, I come in there and I throw a heavy shin, boom, right under his rib cage, right in the midsection. He drops on his hands and knees, and he throws up all over the mat. The referee stops the fight. TKO via vomit. So yeah, man. You throw up, you poop, your bodily fluids start coming out on the mat, the fight's over. Yeah, so keep your bodily fluids inside during a fight, except for sweat. Sweat's okay. Sweat can come out. Ninja Style says, what if the vomit isn't excessive and you're still ready to go and fight? Then keep it in your mouth and swallow it and keep fighting. Because if it's coming out on the mat, it's going to be over if the ref is doing his job. SBV says, I don't think you should eat 30 minutes before, presumably before a fight, unless it's a snack. Yeah, you don't want to have a full meal before a fight. You'll probably be throwing that up, man. That's going to weigh on you. When we eat, it takes about 20% of our total energy to digest food. Did you know that? So if you eat right before a fight, and then you go into that fight, 20% of your energy reserves, which you need, that precious energy you need to fight, where every ounce of it counts, 20%, is being eaten up just to digest what you just ate. So yeah, time your meals appropriately. Renko wants to know, what did I typically eat pre-fight? Dude, I was starving when I was fighting. I didn't have a lot of money, and I didn't have a lot of food, and I didn't have a lot of money to buy food. So I ate whatever I could, whenever I could, which wasn't a lot. Yeah, man. So if you're asking what I did and what you should do ideally, those are different answers, man. If you have unlimited resources and you can eat whatever you want and program your eating however you want before fights, we can talk about that. If you're asking what I did, dude, I was starving. I was literally hungry when I was fighting. Moi moi or moi moi, how do you say that? Any tips on getting back to regular training after half a year off due to injury? Okay. I'm curious how severe this injury was, because there's always a way to train something, no matter how injured you are. Imagine you're in a full body cast. Everything's broken. You can't move anything except your head. All right, exercise your head. Do some neck ups. Do some left rights. Do some jaw exercises. Do some eyebrow raises. Do something, man. There's always something you can do. Exercise your eyelids. Move your ears, right? There's always something you can do. Movement creates blood flow. Blood flow creates healing. So it saddens me a little to hear that you've taken that much time off, but I understand. I understand. Maybe you just mean time off of the intensity of training that you would ideally want to do. So what do? You get back at it. You start doing something. Rule number 1 of fitness: do something. Do something. So Momo says, yes, I have been exercising, but not combat sports training. Okay, great. Great. So you've been exercising, you've been rehabilitating. That's great. That makes me happy to hear, right? That you weren't just dwindling in a lump on the couch or in the side of the room in the corner crying or something like that. But you were exercising. Great. So how do you get back into combat sports training? Just like I was saying before, do something, right? Get back in the gym in the capacity that you can. And it's probably not going to be full contact sparring on day 1, right? It might be just go in there, run through some drills, hit some mitts, hit the pad, something like that. Do some forms, whatever it is that you're able to do, right? And then build from there. Build from there. Other wants to know, how important is flexibility in MMA? Flexibility is super important in MMA, just like it's important in all martial arts. The more flexible you are, the more stuff you can do. There's a never-ending supply of people who want to be great fighters, but they will not stretch to the extent that they can throw a head kick. And so they're limiting their game, they're crippling their game, by not doing that one simple basic thing. It's not that hard to stretch to the point where you can throw head kicks. You just need to be consistent with it. Do dynamic stretches on a regular basis. Do some static stretching. Do some reciprocal stretching. Do some myofascial self-release. All that stuff is good. Do something every day to get more flexible. You don't have to be a contortionist to throw head-level kicks. You don't have to be a contortionist to work a high guard on the ground or something like that. Ninja Style says, can you get so flexible that submissions don't work on you like arm bars? There are some people who have, what's that disease called where, my sister actually has it, where your joints don't connect properly and your cartilage has like this, extra flexibility, and so you can bend your elbows backwards and things like that. If you're one of those people, like this manifests in some people where they've got like super stretchy skin, like they can pull their faces out like that. Sometimes it's called double jointedness, but there is an actual medical condition, and I'm blanking on the name of it. But yeah, if your elbows can literally bend both ways, it's not actually good for you. But yeah, you're going to be really hard to armbar. Is it impossible to catch you with other submissions? No. I get in a position where I can't armbar people all the time, and it's not because they're flexible, just because they're guarding their arms. And guess what you can do from that same grip? Get a figure four up top and go, and then you got a forearm slicer. And it doesn't matter how flexible they are, because you're breaking this bone here, and you're tearing up this flesh right here. So there's always a way to submit people. Let's take one more question, and then I got to skedaddle. Is there a human with a neck that is too big to choke? That's it. Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. That's the one. That's the one we were talking about. That's my sister has that. And yeah, some people have it to much more extreme levels than others. So yeah, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. I saw a picture of a dude today on the internet of a guy who had no neck. He was just like all shoulders and a head. It was like more extreme than this. His shoulders came up to like ear level, to eye level. It was weird. I'm not sure if I could choke that guy. Maybe one more serious question. Okay. All right, we got two questions. How often do I use darces? The darce choke, I use it all the time, and I generally set it up from a 3/4 Nelson because all you got to do is that, and it's right there. And I've got long, lanky arms, and so it works pretty well for me. So I use it all the time. I find it's often a difficult submission to teach to beginners because they do goofy stuff with their arms, and they fold their arms, and they're like, well, I don't understand where my hands go. And all it is just slide your hand from here to here. We got the 3/4 Nelson, and boop, there it is. Squeeze, sprawl, that's it. But they overcomplicate it, but I use it all the time anyway. So if you have some tips on better ways, more effective ways to teach the darce to new jiu-jitsu students, please direct me to that information, because it can be a source of frustration. Ramsey, what are some ways to minimize the effects of minor CTE post-sparring? Okay, CTE. Let's talk about that for a minute. The only way to diagnose CTE is through dissection of the brain. It's only diagnosable after you're dead. So, how do you minimize effects of CTE post-sparring? If you have brain damage, you have brain damage, man. You're going to minimize CTE pre-sparring, not post-sparring, pre-sparring. Here's how. Don't spar like an idiot. Don't spar like a dangerous maniac. Don't turn sparring sessions into fights. Because if you're doing that, you're going to get brain damage. Take care of yourself, protect yourself at all times, and take care of your training partners. Spar light. Do it right. Okay, guys, that's my time for today. We'll do another one of these. Don't know when yet, but we'll do another one of these. Appreciate the questions. It's been fun. It's been real. It's been real fun. Thank you for watching. Now get out there and train.